Hi, Stephanie.
Hey.
Thank you for joining us today for our coffee conversations. We're excited to have Stephanie here to talk about the side effects of chemotherapy and her experience with it and her breast cancer journey and how she navigated through those things. And today is her birthday.
Thank you.
So we're so happy we get to spend her birthday with her today. So Stephanie, let's get into it. Tell us about yourself and your breast cancer journey. What are you doing for your birthday today?
Perfect. So first, I definitely want to say thank you for letting me be here. This is definitely a treat. Forge has been an awesome resource for me, and it's just an exciting gift for me to be able to do this on my birthday. So really, thank you. But my name is Stephanie. For those who don't know me, I am originally from Mississippi and moved to the Birmingham area in 2019 after graduating school, and got married shortly after that to my husband, Mark. And and kind of at that point in my life, I really felt like, I'd been through a lot of difficult things and I've gotten through school and, the hard is behind me.
Mhm.
And then unfortunately, just 11 months after my husband and I got married, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And that was at 26 years old. And it was very challenging and just it was shocking, to be so young. Because when I initially felt a lump that in November of 2018, and I was, even to myself thought, there's no way at 26 that I have breast cancer. And thank goodness at my next appointment, I followed up with or mentioned it to my doctor in January and told them. And fortunately, they were like, I don't think it is, but we'll do our due diligence. And
Sure enough,
right. And thankfully they did and not just, brush it off. And so did their due diligence to do that and got tested and initially did a few ultrasounds and then mammogram biopsy, and then it was positive. So that's a good summary of that time. And, I'm grateful to be here where I am 2.5 years later, and just to be able to celebrate a birthday. So it's even more special now. The birthdays are to have come through that and be where I am now. So I'm super excited.
So, like, what was it like? You got diagnosed in the pandemic. Like that's hard. Most of the people we're seeing now, of course, have been diagnosed in the pandemic where you can't have your whole family in the waiting room with you, So what was that like?
That was truly very scary. That February, March timeframe was basically when it was picking up and it's all over the news and things are shutting down. And there was a point in it where I remember being with Mark and I was like, my doctors aren't responding. The world's shutting down. They sent a test off to California to decide if I was going to do chemo at that point or not. And I remember telling him, like, I'm not going to die because of cancer. This COVID's going to kill me because I'm not going to get treatment.
Yeah.
And it was so scary. And, going through chemo during the height of it and things being shut down and the cases, just being so many cases, it was truly like just a scary event when the whole world is scared and trying to stay away and not have troubles with COVID. And there I was in the middle of that and trying to not get it because I have going through chemo and cancer. So it was very hard and scary.
Yeah. And then it's funny you say that though. Like you're like, cancer's not gonna kill me, COVID's gonna kill me. Like I could get the cancer, but this COVID stuff, like it was a scary time.
Yeah.
And so like going through chemotherapy through that, like what were some thoughts that you had? Like what was chemo gonna be like in your mind when you heard it? Like what did you think?
I feel like I can speak for a lot of people when I say that, when you think of chemotherapy, one of the first things and biggest things that comes to mind is your hair. And that was huge for me because I have always had long, thick, curly hair. And I love my hair. And that was one of the biggest thoughts when that came up. And it was kind of a weird situation with my chemo part because once I was diagnosed, they were hoping that I might not have to do chemo. And so they did a test called the mammoprint, and the results from that would determine if it would even be beneficial for me to do that, or if it would be the same outcomes. And so when that test came back, initially it came back that I would not have to do chemo, that I had low risk for recurrence. So I was ecstatic. And I remember getting that call at work and them telling me that, I just burst out into tears, like, oh, thank goodness I don't have to do chemo, which was one of my bigger fears, because like I said, my hair is was the biggest concern at that point. And I really think it was just a blessing and a sweet thing from the Lord that I didn't have to do chemo at that point. But unfortunately, after my surgery in September, I did have, I think, 4 of the 12 lymph nodes positive come back. So at that point, the recommendation was to do chemo. And I remember my husband and I were in that appointment to get the follow-up from surgery to see how it went. And both my surgeon and oncologist walked in. And I thought, I know it doesn't take 2 providers to tell me that my surgery went great. So poor Mark didn't realize at that point that I would have to do chemo. And he had kind of already checked that out, that likely wouldn't, I would need to do that. But when both of them walked in my head, I knew something's not, everything didn't turn out perfectly. But, the surgeon did exactly what she needed to do, got the right amount of lymph nodes to know what our next plan of action was. She did a phenomenal job. And then they told me at that point that I needed to do chemo. So it's kind of heartbreaking. It's like telling me that again, but I thought it was really sweet, because it was just, I really think and truly believe God's timing, because if I would have started the chemo in March, which was an option, March or May, at that point, they weren't letting visitors in UAB. And that allowed me to do my cold cap therapy and have Mark come in and help me with that. And once I started, and I think it was November, they were allowing a visitor to come back. And that was just the sweetest thing for me.
Made the difference in your experience.
Absolutely. Because one of my first visits to go get my shot, and it was, right in the middle of that, my monthly shot that they started in May. There was another patient there, and his wife caregiver, they wouldn't let her go in the back. And I just thought to myself, if I was starting chemo right now, I would be so upset if Mark was not able to come back with me. So it was just, that timing was such a blessing for me.
Yeah. I mean, it all worked out because now you had him with you.
Absolutely.
So with chemotherapy comes a lot of side effects, that people don't always talk about. Of course, the hugest one that people notice is the hair, but there are other things that go with it too. So I would love to hear from you. What were your side effects in your experience?
Yeah. So fortunately, I am in the medical field, so that looking into those side effects and really studying that beforehand was kind of my thing. And I really needed to do that. And one of my main goals going through chemo was really just to try not to look sick. So I really wanted to look at all the possible side effects that would happen and try to prevent those as much as possible and be prepared as much as I can. But it was really weird, because different side effects would pop up daily, hourly. But my, just so people know, my regimen was adriamycin, Cytoxan, and Taxotere. A lot of people know the adriamycin or the doxorubicin, the Red Devil. Most people know it by that. So really tough regimen, but obviously one of the harshest on hair. So a lot of the side effects, I looked at everything that would affect any part of my body. So I wanted to prepare for my eyebrows, my eyelashes, my skin, my nails, my digestive tract. I mean, just unfortunately, chemo just affects every single part of you, mentally, physically, emotionally. And so one of those, like for my eyebrows, I used, I think it was the Joseph something eyelash or eyebrow serum. They also had an eyelash serum. I used that, and Roden and Fields eyelash booster and their eyebrow booster. and still currently use the eyebrow part, because that's one thing that I really did not like about chemo, that it kind of made my eyebrows difficult, and I'm not good at drawing them on, but
Yeah, it's a skill to it. You know, they got tutorials on it. It's such a skill.
I know, I feel like I've gotten better at it, but it was one of my least favorite things. And, that took a while for them to go away. I feel like I had my eyebrows and eyelashes until the end. I also, one of the things was my skin. My skin was more drier than normal, and I had to continually use lotion. And during the second half of my treatment, during the Taxotere, most people have Taxol, but they're the same class, and so probably has a lot of similar side effects. But one of them, my hands started peeling, and it was the weirdest thing. And during that, I guess, well, I'll back up and kind of mention the first part. So with my treatment, I did adriamycin and Cytoxin first. Did those for 4 rounds and did that every 2 weeks. And that was really, I feel like the most challenging part of it is not knowing what side effects are going to happen, because every person is different in their chemo journey and how they're affected by it. And then, like I said, even daily and hourly, things would change as far as what was happening. And then the fatigue was probably one of the biggest parts of what I was going through with that part of the regimen, because I would have it and then have my treatments on Wednesday. And then fortunately, my work was very cooperative with me and would work with me, and I wouldn't go back until Monday. So I had Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to recover. And that next day, I would just be wiped out. I would be in the bed all day, just exhausted and nauseated. I only actually got sick and threw up one time during the whole time. But it was just this nauseating feeling all the time. Because, with the chemo, they're targeting fast growing cells, and that's, part of your digestive system. So that really just made me feel that way. And at that time, a lot of especially right after a treatment, all I would want to eat is mashed potatoes. I don't know why that was something that I wanted to eat, but that was just helpful and would soothe my stomach. But everyone is so different in that regard. And I, on top of that, it depletes your blood cells and white blood cells, and, decreases the oxygen flow to everywhere. And so it made it, even when I would get out of breath just walking a decent amount of time. And I'm trying to think. And then, of course, with the Taxotere, that portion of the chemo, one of the big ones is neuropathic pain or neuropathy. So one of the things that I did to try to prevent or slow that was I used these cold hands and mittens things. So I had my cold cap that was like negative 30 something degrees, and then the cold hands and cold mittens, and it was absolutely miserable. But I read that, it will progress. Like if it doesn't affect you that much on your first treatment, each one that you do, it's gonna, cause more or have long-term damage or pain and irritation. So I had to, first time I probably use it about 25% of the time, but would coach myself like, you've got to do this, because and bear through this 4 hours of freezing cold so that you don't have long-term neuropathy or bad pain. And currently I was fortunate to just have a good bit of numbness on the bottom of my feet. Right after, there was some shooting pains in my arms and feet, but that's gone away. And it's just kind of the numbness, weird feeling.
So did anything pop up that was unexpected though? Because I know you say you read a bunch of stuff and you're like, okay, that's what you do to help that. That's what you do to help that. So did anything catch you off guard as a symptom?
I would probably say my hands peeling was a big weird one that I didn't really think about or see. And then I'd read some about the nail beds lifting from the treatment, and that was really scary because I'd read about that, and I'd seen where people would paint their fingernails a dark color and that would help. I didn't really look up how true that was, but I was like, if somebody says it will help them, I'm going to paint my fingernails dark. And I did. And fortunately, I kept all of them. And then another, my digestive system with both of them. You see read the package inserts and they're like constipation, diarrhea, and you just never know which one you're going to get. So with mine, it was one set of treatment completely one way, the other set of treatment completely the other way. So I just had to roll with the punches on what came there.
Yeah, I mean, because you can try your best to prepare, but you can never be like super prepared, because you just never know how it's gonna go until you're in that moment. And I know you were fortunate enough to have like Mark with you, your co-survivor. So in what ways, other than him being there, was your family and your support system helpful through chemotherapy? Because you hear somebody going through chemo, you don't necessarily know, well, how do I make that better for them? How do I help them and support them while they're going through this, because you can't do chemo for them,
right.
So what are some things that are helpful for somebody who's going through chemo, but their loved ones want to support them, but they don't know what to do?
Yes, so I am very fortunate and very blessed that I had a huge support system throughout the whole journey. Mark, of course, was very helpful, waited on me hand and foot every kind of way he could, and that was very grateful. I was very grateful for that. My parents, they live in Mississippi, but fortunately, they just love you by feeding you. And so when my mom and stepdad could, they would bring me food from Mississippi, just cook a whole week's worth of food and bring that to me to feed us. And that was also scary too, because my mom works in a nursing home. So they were having COVID scares. And so she would even mask up and garb up to visit me, and we would try to stay away. And then also my mother-in-law here, her and my father-in-law both would bring food. And then my neighbors, they would often bring food. I feel like that was one of the biggest helps, was just people letting us not have to, think about what we were going to eat or how we were going to prepare anything that week. And it was just really huge. And I feel like even myself, and I'm sure a lot of people are the same way, that it's hard to ask for help sometimes, but this is the most opportune time to ask for help, and people want to help. One thing that my sister-in-law did for her sister recently during her journey was she made a cancer registry, and I just thought it was the best idea, because I was like, that's amazing, because I know people want to help, but they don't know how to or what to do. And so she kind of took some different things that I had recommended, and they had research that would best help her, but she kind of put a registry together so people could just get what they needed. And she also did a meal train thing online that people could sign up to bring meals, and that was just super helpful. And were just
and it's like nice to tell people like, this is what I need, without them having to ask you, and you'd be like, I really don't want to say it, I know what I need, but I don't want to tell you, or I feel awkward for asking. But to have something like people can just go and look at and say, hey, this is the thing okay, I'm just going to send it. And you can write them a little note or send it with them, but that is so helpful for both people, because I feel good, I'm supporting you, I'm glad you're letting me be there, versus like, I don't technically have to ask, or I don't have to tell you that I need something, because there's a bit of pride, there's a bit of shame that comes with needing help. And then when you're going through chemo, you're not even thinking about ways that people can help you. You're thinking about, how can I get through this? Like, what changes can I make? And kind of backing up a little bit, when we were talking about some of the symptoms, I know you read online some of the things that you could do to kind of help with some of the symptoms that you had. I know one of the hugest for women is our hair. Our hair is a glory. It's the way we express ourselves. It means different things to different people, but still it's very huge for us. And that's like a chemo staple, right? Like, you may or may not lose your hair. And I know that's something that was really huge for you, and Mark kind of helped you through that. So I would love for you to kind of touch on what that process looked like for you in preserving your hair through chemo.
So obviously that was huge for me. And I accepted, that time before I was starting chemo. I even put sticky notes around my house and was like, my hair does not define me. So I really had to preach that to myself and just kind of prepare myself. It's possible that I will lose my hair. And, they tell you that, all the cold cap companies out there, because it's not a guarantee. And I had accepted that, and was still like, if I've see one person successful, I've got to try this. So I did all the research that I could. They have the manual caps which is what I had, where you put them on and then rotate them every 25 minutes on your head an hour before treatment, during treatment, and then 5 to 6 hours afterwards, depending on your regimen. And then they also have a company that I think it's Paxman is that company, but you just bring the cap with you and they plug it up at the facility. It's a lot less work involved with it, and I think it's a little bit cheaper. But with that one, I think their results had about maybe 20 to 35% efficacy with my regimen. And then the company that I wound up going with, it's a manual one called Penguin Cold Caps, and they had, I think, more upwards of 60 to 75% efficacy. So I was like, gotta do that one.
Yeah.
It's a lot more work. We had to get dry ice for each. Mark would go get that the night before, put those in a cooler. We'd have to get like 50 to 70 pounds of dry ice. And that became a chore too, because the beginning around that time, they were coming out with the vaccines. So dry ice was vanishing and people were using that to store vaccines. So we had to, we were very fortunate. Someone, I think we got in touch with someone that owned a dry ice company or ice company, and they helped us, get those each treatment. And because at one point, Mark was like calling all the Publix in Birmingham to make sure that we got enough. So that took that stress away. And I also, one of the things that I would do before and trying to prepare for the cold cap was kind of see the timeline of kind of when the hair would shed and how much would come out and what I could expect. And I saw a lot of people kind of give their befores and their afters, but I didn't see a lot of in between. So that was one of the things I also did, was recorded, it was probably a good weekly average on how much I would record, but I have a Facebook page with all of that information on, on day 21, this much came out or whatnot. So people can see that. And because that was huge, and I just dug on the internet to find that. So made sure that I can do that. And I was very fortunate that at the end of treatment, I probably had about 60% of my hair remaining. And then it slowly, progressively decreased. I think right now I probably have 30% of my original hair, but I think I ended chemo in March, and then in October, I got some extensions for the first time. And the person that I wound up going with, she uses this something like that, SoCap USA, I think. And that wound up being the perfect option for me, the way that my new hair was growing in and the way, they use that to kind of hide a lot of the thinning that I had. So there's a lot of, different resources that I used. I used a Topic powder so that when it got a little thin up front, I was able to sprinkle that on and you couldn't even tell if I was having some thinning spots. And one of the coolest days was when I could see that just the little hairs peeking through that were growing back. I was still going through the end of the taxotere and it started going out. And I remember seeing that in the bathroom for the first time and running to Mark and crying like, Mark, my hair's growing back. And it was very hard and challenging thing, but I'm very grateful. And I've noticed that I've seen that in Europe, it's pretty popular, the cold capping and people doing that. And now I'm just, it's growing here in the US, and I'm just it's one of my missions and passions to kind of tell people about the cold capping.
So did it change your hair texture? Like after it started growing in, like, is your hair texture different now, or?
So it's interesting because I grew up with curly, kinky hair. And then as I grew older, and it got longer, and it just kind of it wasn't as curly. So it's coming back super kinky curly right now. And I'm really hoping it's not just chemo curls, that it's going to stay. So I'm waiting till I'll be glad when I'm able to cut off the old hair and then just have the new hair and then just let it see how curly it is. I'm excited for that.
I mean, and thank you for that transparency too. I know, we've had some coffee conversations. We have clients all the time. And, what do I do about my hair? What does that feel like? What resources are out there? Because wigs are not for everybody. Everybody doesn't want to do a wig. Some people want to try to preserve if they can, but they don't know how.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad that you like have those tips, and we'll be sure to share your Facebook information too,
Sure.
so that viewers can kind of go online and somebody's getting their life saved. So that viewers can kind of go online and kind of go through that journey and get some transparency, because a lot of times you look at stuff online and you're like, is this real? Is that a real person? So it's really great that you've given us the opportunity to see a real person and what they're going through and what to kind of expect. So what are some things that you wish you would have known prior to starting chemotherapy?
I really felt like that was a hard question, but I think I almost feel like I knew this, but I didn't practice it really well, and I wish I would have done more in this aspect. But it was really just asking what I needed, and more specifically with my providers, my doctors. They were, I felt like they often said, yes, if you need anything at all, just message us in the portal or reach out. But it was really hard for me to do that because especially during the pandemic, I knew about the healthcare overload and the short staffed and everyone just fatigued and burnout. And I didn't want to burden them at all with something I thought I could manage myself and be fine with and not ask for help. But that's one thing I wish I would have maybe. I feel like some people did encourage me to do that and tell me to, reach out, but it was still very hard for me. So I wish I would have been a little better at that.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to someone who's about to start a chemo journey or currently in the thick of it and just, not really able to see their way through it? Like, how I'm going to make it through this. I'm tired. All of these things are happening to my body that I can't control. My support system is just all over the place. Like, yeah, they're great, but they don't know how to help me. And I don't know what ways to go about asking them for the help that I need. What are some suggestions that you have for them as they're going through this?
So I'd probably say to do that, definitely ask their provider if they need help at all. Even if it's something little that you think is, there's no treatment or there's no option for you, at least letting someone know that and getting that off your chest and expressing that, because that was, even a hard part of the cancer journey too, that emotional impact that you have. And I think really just reaching out for help is crucial, and mentally, physically, emotionally, I would just encourage people to ask for what you need. If the help is not there, at least you asked and you tried. But I think 9 times out of 10, the help and what you need is going to be there, available for you.
Advocating for yourself.
Absolutely.
I'm saying what you need when you need it, and getting over the guilt and the shame of it is the hardest part. Thank you, Stephanie.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. And like you kind of mentioned earlier, that you would share my Facebook page. It's there to help others, for other women to see, even if some aspects of their journey, if it's not the same as mine, hopefully they can just feel like someone's there with them, and anyone can reach out if they need help.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Stephanie. And again,
thank you. Thank you.